Friends, if you're excited to watch the thrilling and spine-chilling new horror movie The Monkey 2025 in English, then make sure to like this video right now. And if you're visiting our channel for the very first time, a big welcome to you. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss out on updates about the latest films, reviews, and all things cinema. Your support means a lot and helps us bring even more exciting content to you. Now, let's talk about The Monkey, a film that's already creating a buzz among horror fans and Stephen King followers around the world. In today's video, we're going to explore every important aspect of this much-anticipated movie. We'll dive deep into what the film is about, its storyline, and the mystery behind that creepy cymbal-banging monkey toy. We'll also tell you exactly where you can watch this movie, whether it's releasing on any OTT platform, streaming service, or if it's scheduled to premiere on a satellite TV channel. Whether you prefer watching online or on TV, we'll have all the details right here for you. But that's not all. We'll also take a close look at the technical side of the film. From the cinematography to the sound design, from the visual effects to the background score, you'll get to know how the team behind the camera brought this terrifying tale to life. We'll cover the entire journey of the film, from pre-production planning to filming locations, post-production editing, and special effects. You'll also learn about the film's overall budget, how much it cost to make, and its box office performance, whether it became a blockbuster hit or not. We'll talk about the story in detail, including a brief summary to give you a good idea of what to expect, without giving away any major spoilers. I'll share my own quick review of the film's plot and pacing, and whether it manages to live up to the hype. We'll also go over some interesting facts about the making of the film, hidden details you may have missed in the trailer, and trivia about the characters and plot. Of course, we can't forget the cast. We'll take a look at the actors who brought these intense and eerie characters to life. Who played which role, how their performances stood out, and what made their characters memorable. You'll find it all here. From the lead roles to the supporting cast, every performance will be discussed so you can appreciate the talent behind this scary story. So friends, make sure to stick around till the end of the video because there's a lot to uncover and enjoy. Whether you're a horror movie fan or just curious about this creepy Stephen King adaptation, this video is for you. So, without wasting any more time, let's get started. Alright friends, let's dive into the dark and twisted world of The Monkey. A story that doesn't just creep up on you. It jumps right out of the shadows with a wicked grin and a pair of clanging cymbals. The movie kicks off with a mysterious and eerie discovery. Two brothers, Hal and Bill, stumble upon a dusty, old toy monkey in the attic of their childhood home. You know the type, the kind that clangs cymbals together with an unsettling smile. The moment they find it, strange things start happening. This isn't your ordinary forgotten toy. Every time the monkey claps its cymbals, someone dies. And not just random strangers, people connected to the boys, making the whole situation intensely personal. Now here's where the narrative grabs you by the collar. The story does follow a somewhat conventional structure in terms of beginning, middle, and end. But the way it plays with the timeline, jumping between past and present, is where things get really juicy. We're taken back to the 1950s where young Hal and Bill are growing up, slowly beginning to realize that this toy monkey isn't just creepy, it's cursed. As kids, they try everything to get rid of it. But as you might guess, some curses don't let go so easily. The film doesn't just tell the story in a straight line. It peels back layers like an onion, each flashback giving you more context, more dread, and more reasons to be glued to the screen. Back in the present day, grown-up Hal is now a father himself. And guess what? The monkey's back. Somehow, impossibly, it finds its way back into their lives. This is the moment where the emotional stakes skyrocket. It's not just about the brothers anymore. It's about protecting the next generation. Hal, already haunted by the trauma of his childhood, must now confront this evil head-on to save his own children. This shift from personal horror to a father's desperation to protect his family adds a strong emotional layer to the supernatural chaos. The key turning points are brilliant. The first time the monkey kills? Chilling. The realization that the deaths are directly tied to the cymbal crashes? Terrifying. And the moment the monkey reappears after years of silence? That's when you know things are about to go off the rails. Every act is punctuated by escalating danger, forcing the characters to dig deeper into the mystery behind the monkey's origins. And let me tell you, it's not just a cursed toy for the sake of horror. There's lore here. There's a dark origin that makes the whole story feel rooted in something ancient and malevolent, not just random supernatural weirdness. But here's the kicker. The narrative also plays with your expectations. Just when you think the characters have figured it out, just when they think they've got a handle on it, the story throws in a cruel twist. It's like the monkey itself is playing with them and with us. You feel the tension rise with each clang of those tiny cymbals, and the question becomes not just how do they stop it, but can they survive long enough to try? The structure keeps you constantly guessing, which makes every scene feel important. Even the quiet moments feel like the calm before the next cymbal crash. And thematically, it hits hard. This isn't just a story about a haunted object, it's a story about trauma, about how the past refuses to stay buried, about how evil can echo through generations if left unchecked. There's a deep emotional undercurrent, especially in the way the film explores the bond between siblings and between parents and children. The monkey isn't just a horror element, it's a symbol of inherited pain, of secrets kept too long, of the things we try to forget, but can't. So if you think you're just watching a spooky monkey movie, think again. The monkey takes a simple premise and cranks up the tension, the emotion, and the scares to deliver a story that feels both personal and mythic. It's the kind of tale that pulls you in with childhood nostalgia and then scares the living daylights out of you with every cymbal crash. Let's talk characters, because in The Monkey, it's not just the haunted toy that steals the spotlight. The human drama here is just as intense as the supernatural horror, and the characters are written with enough depth and emotion to keep you fully invested in their twisted journey. Right from the start, we meet Hal and Bill, two brothers with a complicated past and a childhood scarred by something most people would call ridiculous, a toy monkey. But this isn't just about a creepy relic. It's about how that relic shaped their lives and continues to haunt them in ways far beyond jump scares. Hal, as the central character, is beautifully layered. In the flashbacks, we see young Hal, curious, brave, and already a little haunted by a sense of responsibility. He tries to understand what the monkey is, how it works, and most importantly, how to stop it. You can sense that protective instinct developing early, especially towards his younger brother, Bill. Fast forward to the present, and Hal has transformed into a man carrying the weight of the past on his shoulders. He's no longer just a scared kid, he's a father now. And this is where the real character growth comes in. Hal's arc is rooted in fear, guilt, and redemption. The monkey is back, the deaths are starting again, and Hal is forced to confront the monster from his past, not just for his own sake, but to protect his kids from the nightmare he barely survived. That evolution, from victim to protector, is powerful, especially when you see how determined he is to finally break the cycle. Now Bill, Hal's brother, is a fascinating contrast. As kids, Bill is more innocent, more trusting. He looks up to Hal, but he's also the one most emotionally affected by the trauma. In the present, we get a sense that Bill tried to move on, to pretend like none of it ever happened. But trauma doesn't work like that. As the events unfold, you see Bill cracking, his memories returning, his fear resurfacing. What makes his arc interesting is how different it is from Hal's. While Hal dives headfirst into facing the evil, Bill tries to hold on to normalcy. That tension between the brothers adds emotional fire to the story. It's not just about surviving the monkey, it's about facing the things they buried inside themselves decades ago. And let's not forget the supporting characters. Hal's children are not just background noise. They have their own personalities, their own reactions to the strange events happening around them. You feel the stakes rise every time they're in danger, and it's through their eyes that we sometimes experience the full terror of the monkey. Their relationship with Hal also reveals more about his character. The tenderness, the fierce protectiveness, the unspoken guilt of bringing danger into their lives. It's those quiet, human moments between jump scares that make the story hit harder. Even the monkey itself, though not a character in the traditional sense, feels oddly alive. It doesn't speak. It doesn't move unless it's ready to cause death. but its presence shapes everyone's actions. It becomes the dark mirror that forces each character to confront their worst fears and deepest regrets. Every clang of those cymbals feels like the monkey is calling out their secrets, one death at a time. The relationships are the real glue holding this horror story together. Hal and Bill's brotherhood is at the heart of the narrative, strained by the past, shaped by grief, but never completely broken. Their scenes together are packed with emotion, especially when they begin to piece together that the curse they thought they escaped is still alive and well. There's anger, blame, guilt, but also love. That emotional complexity gives weight to every decision they make, every risk they take, and every moment they try to hold it together while everything around them falls apart. So while the plot might be about a killer monkey toy, the soul of the monkey lies in its characters, their fear, their growth, and their desperate attempts to right the wrongs of the past. This isn't just a horror film with jump scares and creepy noises. It's a story about people, flawed, scared, brave people, trying to escape a nightmare that never really ended. And watching them fight, fall, rise, and confront their demons, that's where the real magic of the movie happens. Let's get into the heart and soul of the monkey, the performances. Because no matter how creepy your haunted toy is, if the actors don't sell the fear, the grief, and the madness, then it's just a toy clapping cymbals. But oh no, not here. In this film, the cast doesn't just perform, they embody their characters so convincingly that you feel like you're trapped in the curse right along with them. Let's start with the powerhouse at the center, Theo James as adult Hal. Now, this is a performance that sticks with you. He brings a raw intensity to Hal, the kind of performance where every look, every pause, every crack in his voice tells a story. You can see the trauma in his eyes from the very first frame. There's a heaviness to him, like he's been carrying this curse for years, and now that it's back, he knows exactly how dangerous it is. What's so impressive is the way Theo balances fear and resolve. One minute he's quietly breaking down in private, the next he's charging into danger to protect his family. It's a performance full of emotional texture. You feel the desperation, the guilt, the love, the fear, all without him having to overact. He doesn't just play Hal, he becomes him. Then there's Christian Convery, who plays young Hal in the flashback scenes. Let me tell you, this kid is not messing around. He doesn't just deliver lines, he feels them. You believe every bit of his terror, every ounce of confusion and bravery. He's got that rare ability to hold the screen, even when he's silent. His wide-eyed expressions, his subtle shifts in body language, it all feels real. And when he starts putting the pieces together about the monkey's deadly connection, that realization hits hard because of how genuinely he reacts. You forget you're watching an actor, which is probably the best compliment you can give a child performance in a horror film. And we have to talk about Tatiana Maslany, who plays Hal's wife. She doesn't have as much screen time as Hal, but wow, she brings the emotional backbone to the family dynamic. Her performance is grounded, fierce, and full of subtle strength. She's the voice of reason, the emotional anchor, and the one who sees the cracks forming before anyone else admits something is wrong. And when she realizes what's at stake, her shift from skeptic to protector is completely believable. You feel for her because she's trying to hold a family together while something unexplainable and terrifying threatens to tear it apart. Now, let's not forget the supporting cast. Bill, played by Elijah Wood, is another standout. He brings such a unique energy to the role, a mix of jittery anxiety and bottled up pain. There's something deeply unsettling about his performance, in the best way. You can tell that Bill has been pretending everything's fine for years, and Elijah plays that repression perfectly. His scenes with Theo James are especially strong. The tension, the buried resentment, the brotherly bond that refuses to die. Their chemistry feels authentic, which adds layers to the family dynamic and raises the stakes emotionally. Even the smaller roles feel rich. From the concerned neighbors to the strange characters who know too much about the monkey's origins, every actor seems fully committed. No one phones it in. And that's crucial in a horror movie, because if one person breaks the illusion, the whole atmosphere falls apart. Here, every single cast member adds to the tension, the dread, and the emotional weight of the story. What's amazing is how much the performances contribute to the believability of the entire film. You're watching these characters react to a cursed toy monkey, and yet it all feels incredibly real. The fear doesn't come from cheap jump scares. It comes from watching people you believe in slowly unravel under pressure. That's what makes the horror hit so much harder. These actors make you care, and once you care, every cymbal crash feels like a punch to the gut. So if you're wondering whether the cast delivers, they don't just deliver, they elevate the whole experience. They bring depth, vulnerability, and a kind of haunted humanity that makes The Monkey more than just a horror story. They make it feel like something that could really happen, which makes it all the more terrifying. Let's talk about the puppet master behind the scenes, director Osgood Perkins. If The Monkey feels like a slow-burning nightmare with a heartbeat that gets louder every minute, that's all thanks to his steady, deliberate, and chilling direction. This isn't a movie that just wants to scare you. It wants to crawl into your brain, sit there quietly, and then bang its cymbals when you least expect it. And Perkins, let's be honest, knows exactly how to mess with your mind. From the very first frame, you can feel the tone being carefully crafted. Everything is cold, quiet, and just slightly off. The lighting isn't overly dramatic or theatrical. It's moody, natural, and soaked in unease. The color palette leans into muted tones and shadows, which works brilliantly for a story like this. The house doesn't look haunted. It looks normal. And that's what makes it so effective. Perkins creates a world where horror seeps in through the cracks of everyday life. There are no flickering neon signs saying something scary is coming. Instead, the dread builds slowly, like a fog you don't notice until you're surrounded by it. And when it comes to pacing, he plays the long game. This isn't a jump scare every 5 minutes kind of horror film. The terror comes from waiting, from watching, from knowing that something bad is going to happen, but not knowing when. That's a signature Perkins move, tension through patience. He lets scenes breathe. He lets silences stretch. And he trusts the audience to lean in, to squint into the darkness, to start seeing things that may or may not be there. It's a psychological dance, and Perkins leads without ever showing his hand too early. Now, let's get into shot composition. This man knows how to frame a scene like it's a portrait of fear. Static shots that hold for just a second too long. Wide angles that make the characters feel small, almost swallowed by their surroundings. Close-ups that catch every twitch, every tear, every flicker of doubt in a character's face. There's a precision here that's surgical. And The Monkey? He gives that little cymbal clapping menace the royal horror treatment. Whenever the monkey is in the frame, even when it's not moving, you feel it. Perkins uses it like a ticking time bomb. It's not just a prop, it's a presence, a threat, a character all its own, and the way it's shot adds to the mystery and the menace. He also plays with perspective in clever ways. Flashbacks aren't thrown in just to give us backstory. They're woven into the present in a way that makes memory feel dangerous. Past and present start to blur, and you're never entirely sure what's real, what's remembered, or what's imagined. That choice alone adds a surreal layer to the storytelling, making the curse feel like something that infects time itself. 1 minute, you're watching Hal deal with the monkey in the present. The next, you're back in the 50s watching his younger self do the exact same thing. And you start to wonder if the cycle ever really ended, or if it's just looping forever. And let's not forget the sound design and how it's used to support the direction. Perkins doesn't drown you in noise. He lets silence do the heavy lifting. When the monkey finally claps its cymbals, it's not just a sound, it's a scream in the quiet. Every clang echoes, every creak of the floor, every breath in a quiet room, every sudden silence where there should be sound. It all plays into the creeping dread he masterfully builds. Even the emotional beats are carefully directed. This isn't just about getting characters from point A to point B. Perkins makes sure every emotional moment lands with weight. He gives his actors space to deliver raw, vulnerable performances, and he knows exactly when to push the tension and when to pull back and let a character's pain sit in the frame. Those choices elevate the story from simple horror to emotional horror, the kind that gets under your skin and stays there. What's brilliant is how Perkins resists the urge to overdirect. He doesn't scream horror at you. He whispers it. He lets the story unfold in a way that feels inevitable, like a slow fall down a dark well. And you can't help but keep falling with it. The atmosphere he builds, the emotional currents he taps into, the pacing he sticks to like a conductor building toward a terrifying crescendo, it's all meticulously done. This isn't a haunted house ride. It's a haunted memory, and Perkins makes sure you feel every inch of it. If you ever wondered how a camera can make your skin crawl without a single drop of blood, The Monkey has the answer, courtesy of cinematography that doesn't just show you the story, it wraps around you like a fog. Every frame feels haunted, and not because of jump scares or flashy effects, but because of how it's composed, lit, and timed. From the very beginning, the cinematography is whispering something's not right, even if nothing has happened yet. Let's talk camera angles first. This film knows exactly where to place the camera to make you feel either completely helpless or deeply involved. You get these low, almost voyeuristic shots that make you feel like you're spying on something forbidden. Or high overhead shots that shrink the characters down into tiny figures lost in their own world, suggesting that whatever is haunting them is way bigger than they are. Sometimes the camera stays still for so long that the silence becomes a character all on its own. You start questioning what you're seeing. Is that monkey moving? Was that a shadow? It plays with your eyes in subtle, eerie ways. Nothing is random. Even the most ordinary domestic spaces feel dangerous because of how they're shot. The framing in this movie is downright surgical. There's always a sense of imbalance. Characters are often placed off-center, creating a visual tension that mirrors the emotional tension they're living through. You rarely get those perfect, symmetrical shots that feel safe. Instead, things are slightly tilted, slightly off-kilter, and it keeps you on edge. The monkey, when it appears, is often framed like a lurking predator, sometimes in the background, sometimes half in shadow, sometimes just out of focus. And that choice makes it scarier than if it were constantly front and center. The cinematography understands that what we think we see is often more terrifying than what we do. Lighting plays a massive role here too. Most of the movie lives in soft shadows and low light. It doesn't overuse darkness, but it lets it creep in naturally. You're not dealing with pitch black hallways and flickering lights every 5 seconds. Instead, you're looking at rooms lit by a single lamp, a hallway washed in sickly yellow, or a scene at dusk where everything feels like it's fading. That kind of lighting doesn't scream horror. It whispers it in your ear while you're trying to figure out what's just beyond the corner of the frame. And then there's the contrast between past and present. Flashbacks have this dreamlike, almost washed out quality, which makes them feel distant and fragile, like looking through the fog of memory. The present is sharper, colder, and more grounded, visually reflecting how the horror is no longer trapped in the past. And yes, there are some visually striking moments that will burn themselves into your brain. One standout involves the monkey sitting perfectly still on a dusty shelf, lit by the flicker of an old lamp, with a character's terrified reflection visible in a cracked mirror nearby. Nothing moves, nothing jumps, but the whole scene hums with dread because of how it's lit, how it's framed, and how long the camera holds. Another brilliant sequence shows a character slowly walking down a hallway, the camera pulling back with every step, widening the frame, revealing more darkness, more emptiness, more tension. You start leaning forward in your seat, waiting for the hit, but the movie just keeps stretching that rubber band of fear without ever snapping it right away. That's cinematographic storytelling at its finest, controlling not just what you see, but how you feel as you're seeing it. And then there are the little tricks. The use of reflections. The way characters are framed next to doors, staircases, hallways that seem to go on forever. These aren't just artistic flourishes, they're tools. Tools used to isolate characters, to build unease, to remind us that the curse isn't just something supernatural. It's in the walls, in the silence, in the shadows, and the camera sees it all, even when the characters don't. The beauty of the cinematography in The Monkey is that it never tries to distract you with style. It invites you into the nightmare and then lets the visuals slowly twist it tighter. It creates an atmosphere where everything looks almost normal, but never quite right. And that's what makes it unforgettable. Every frame is a breadcrumb on a trail that leads straight into the darkness, and you can't help but follow it, frame by terrifying frame. Now let's dig into the invisible strings that hold the monkey together, the editing and pacing. You know a film is doing its job when you don't even realize how much the editing is shaping your experience. In this case, it's like someone is winding a music box behind the scenes, slowly, carefully, until that monkey suddenly claps and your whole body tenses. The way this film is cut plays directly into the rhythm of the story, and it's this rhythm that keeps you locked in, even when nothing explosive is happening. From the start, the editing doesn't rush to grab you by the collar. It eases you in, lets you get comfortable, and then starts pulling at your nerves, one frame at a time. Transitions are smooth but deliberate. Scenes aren't cut too fast. They're allowed to linger, to breathe, to steep in atmosphere. That breathing space is what makes The Monkey such an eerie experience. You're not being shoved through the plot. You're walking through it slowly, looking over your shoulder with every step. This slower pacing at the beginning is crucial. It gives you time to feel the weight of the story, to absorb the details, to settle into the emotional undercurrent. It lets the family drama grow roots before the horror vines start to wrap around it. But here's where the editing really starts to shine, when the past and present start to intertwine. Instead of jarring jumps back and forth, the transitions between timelines feel almost ghostly. One scene slips into another, sometimes through a shared line of dialogue, sometimes through a sound cue, sometimes through a visual echo. The result? You stop thinking of the story as then and now and start feeling it as one seamless nightmare stretched across decades. The editing plays a major role in creating that fluid, memory-like structure. It doesn't point a big flashing arrow at each time shift. It just shifts, and you feel it more than you notice it. The pacing, too, dances on that razor-thin line between too slow and just right. Some horror films try to sprint. The Monkey paces itself like it knows exactly where it's going and exactly how long it wants you to stay uncomfortable. You get these long, quiet stretches where you can almost hear your own heartbeat. Then, just when you think nothing's going to happen, bam, something tiny but devastating happens. A sound, a cut to the monkey, a sudden drop in music. And those moments hit 10 times harder because the editing gave you space to anticipate, to dread, to squirm in your seat a little. And it's not just about scares. The emotional pacing is spot on, too. There's enough time between terrifying sequences for you to connect with the characters, to feel their stress mounting, to absorb their pain and confusion. You get just enough of the domestic scenes, the flashbacks, the sibling dynamics, before the next wave of dread rolls in. That balance keeps the story grounded and makes the horror feel personal. You're not just watching creepy stuff happen, you're living it with them. And that connection, that's the editor doing surgical work in the background to make sure every beat lands just where it needs to. There's also this steady rhythm to how information is revealed. The mystery of the monkey doesn't come in an info dump. Instead, pieces are doled out bit by bit. A newspaper clipping here, a hushed conversation there, a character remembering something they'd buried deep. The editing controls that drip feed like a master DJ, controlling the drop. You're always intrigued, always leaning forward, always needing just a little more to put the puzzle together. And when the film finally decides to turn up the heat, the pacing accelerates, not in a chaotic, action-heavy way, but with a kind of quiet urgency. Scenes start getting tighter. Cuts get sharper. The sense of we're running out of time starts creeping in. But the film never spirals into confusion. Even in the tensest moments, the editing stays focused, clear, deliberate. It doesn't throw shaky cuts or rapid-fire scenes at you. Instead, it escalates tension through rhythm, steadily shortening the gaps between moments of calm and moments of horror until they blur together. That's the magic of it all. You don't really notice the editing because it's not showy. It's not screaming for attention. It's guiding your heartbeat, setting your pace, making you feel like you're watching a ghost story told by someone who's lived it. Whether the monkey is clapping its cymbals or just sitting there doing absolutely nothing, the edit makes sure you're staring, waiting, breathing a little too fast, and never quite sure when it's all going to snap. Let's talk about the sound that slithers under your skin without you even realizing it. The score of the monkey. This is not your typical horror soundtrack that yells "Bio" every 5 minutes with screeching violins. No, this score whispers. It lingers. It stalks. And when it finally decides to scream, it doesn't just scare you. It unsettles every part of you. Composer Elvis Perkins, yes, the director's brother, which makes the collaboration even more eerie and intimate, builds a soundscape that feels like it was composed in a haunted attic full of memories, grief, and something far worse just waiting to be heard. The brilliance of the score lies in its restraint. The music doesn't flood the scenes, it haunts them. It drifts in like mist, settles into the corners, and then slowly tightens around your neck without you noticing. You might not even remember an exact melody, but you'll remember the feeling it gave you. Like you're walking through a room where something terrible just happened or is about to happen. That's how the music works here. Not as a background filler, but as an emotional co-conspirator. It knows the story's trauma. It knows the character's fears. And it moves in perfect lockstep with the emotions on screen. There are recurring motifs that sneak up on you. A gentle piano line here, a droning low hum there, the occasional pluck of strings that sound slightly out of tune, as if the instruments themselves are remembering something painful. These motifs don't announce themselves loudly. Instead, they loop and echo and mutate. Sometimes a theme you heard in a flashback returns later in the present, but twisted, darker, more hollow. The music is constantly evolving alongside the curse, just like the characters. You start to realize that even the score is part of the storytelling, carrying the emotional weight of scenes and quietly hinting at the danger lurking beneath the surface. And then comes the silence. Oh, the silence. Some of the most terrifying moments in The Monkey are absolutely quiet. Eerily, unnaturally quiet. The score knows exactly when to step back and let the silence do the talking. There's something deeply unsettling about hearing nothing but a character's breathing, the creak of a floorboard, or the faint ticking of time. In those moments, silence is the score, and it works because the composer has carefully conditioned us to listen, to expect the music. So when it vanishes, your brain starts filling in the blanks, and that's when the real fear kicks in. Now, when the score does rise to the surface, especially during key scenes with the monkey, it's not bombastic or operatic. It's tight. It's focused. It's like the soundtrack of a curse trying to wake up. Low-frequency rumbles that make your chest vibrate. Subtle strings that feel like fingernails on your spine. Metallic sounds that echo the monkey's symbols without directly mimicking them. Like the music itself is trying to warn you that something isn't right. In one particularly spine-chilling sequence, the score actually mimics a heartbeat. Thump, 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 matching the rising anxiety of a character about to confront something unspeakable. That heartbeat builds, layer by layer, until it blurs with the ambient sounds around it. You don't even know when the music started or how it got so loud, but you feel it. It's primal. What's also impressive is how well the score understands the emotional duality of the film. The Monkey isn't just about supernatural horror. It's about guilt, grief, memory, and loss. And the music doesn't ignore that. In fact, some of the most beautiful musical moments come during scenes of reflection or sorrow, not horror. There's a tragic melody that creeps in during a character's moment of regret, and it doesn't try to scare you. It tries to reach you, to make you feel the sadness beneath the scares. That kind of emotional intelligence in a horror score is rare, and it makes the fear feel richer, more human. So no, the soundtrack of The Monkey doesn't try to dominate the film. It doesn't try to be the star of the show. It's the ghost in the room, the whisper in your ear, the sound of a memory you'd rather forget, playing softly in the background until it grows into a nightmare. It's that steady presence you didn't even know was there, until it stops, and you're left holding your breath, waiting for the monkey to clap. Let's peel back the spooky exterior of The Monkey and take a long look at the twisted, emotional, and surprisingly philosophical heart beating underneath. Yes, there's a cursed toy monkey clapping its cymbals and leaving terror in its wake. But that is just the surface level horror. Beneath it, this film is digging into something much deeper, much darker, and far more human. It's about guilt. It's about memory. It's about the kind of trauma that doesn't just stay with you. It grows with you. This isn't a movie that's only trying to scare you. It's trying to hold up a mirror and ask, what happens when you never truly let go of the past? First and foremost, this film tackles the theme of unresolved guilt like it's the main character. The monkey might be the physical object wreaking havoc, but what it really represents is something a lot scarier. Personal responsibility and the kind of shame you try to bury deep but can't stop hearing clapping in the back of your head. Both brothers in the story are carrying their own version of trauma. One tries to move on, the other can't. But the monkey doesn't let them forget. Every cymbal crash, every eerie reappearance of that damn toy is like a memory coming back to life. It's not just haunting them, it's holding them accountable. Then there's the idea of generational trauma. This is where the film really flexes its thematic muscles. You get the sense that this isn't just about these two brothers or this one family. It's about patterns, cycles, emotional hand-me-downs. It's about how pain, especially the unspoken kind, can echo from parent to child, from sibling to sibling, until someone finally confronts it. The monkey becomes a symbol for this endless loop. It doesn't age. It doesn't forget. It just waits. And when the brothers reunite in adulthood, that's the moment the curse doesn't just return. It awakens, because the emotional baggage has finally reached its boiling point. Memory plays a huge role too. Not the neat, polished kind, but the messy, subjective, half-repressed kind. The film toys with the reliability of memory in subtle ways. Did that really happen? Was it as bad as we remember? Are we guilty of something, or are we just afraid we are? These aren't just psychological mind games. They're core to the narrative's engine. Because if you can't trust your own past, how do you protect yourself from repeating it? The monkey doesn't care what's true. It feeds on fear, and nothing is scarier than a truth you don't want to face. And let's not ignore the lurking presence of death. It's everywhere in the monkey, not in a sensationalized way, but in a very raw, very real way. The film seems to be asking, how do we process loss? What happens when we don't? It's not just about the people who die. It's about the emotional aftermath, the regret, the things unsaid, the things we wish we could take back. The monkey's victims aren't just random. They're tied to emotional beats in the story. Every death has a weight, and every reaction from the characters tells us more about how deep their wounds go. Death isn't just an ending in this film. It's a symptom of something far more rooted in the character's psychology. There's also a quiet commentary on the idea of inevitability. You know that feeling when you're watching something unfold and you just know where it's heading, but there's nothing you can do about it? That's not just suspense, it's thematic. The monkey doesn't feel like a villain you can defeat. It feels like the embodiment of fate, of consequence, of emotional reckoning. The characters can try to run, try to hide, try to forget, but the monkey claps and the past catches up. The message is chilling. You can delay the confrontation, but you can't avoid it forever. And buried inside all of that dread is one final theme, connection. As broken, strained, and fragile as it may be, the bond between the two brothers is the emotional spine of the film. Their shared trauma, their divergent paths, their painful reunion. It all points to this aching desire to understand one another, even when the past makes that almost impossible. The film doesn't scream this message, it whispers it between cymbal crashes, suggesting that healing is possible, but it comes with a cost. And it only starts when we stop hiding from what hurt us in the first place. So sure, the monkey will make you jump. It'll creep you out. It might even make you check your childhood toy shelf. But long after the final scare, what really lingers is the way it uses horror to explore the human condition. The monkey may be cursed, but what it brings out in the characters, that's the real horror. And the real genius. When it comes to the monkey, the visual effects and CGI play a surprisingly clever role in pulling you into its creepy world without ever breaking the spell. You might expect a film about a haunted toy monkey to go full-on flashy with digital effects, glowing eyes, sudden bursts of supernatural fire, or wild, over-the-top manifestations of the curse. But this film takes a much subtler approach, which is exactly what makes the effects work so well. Instead of overwhelming you with CGI fireworks, the visual effects serve the story quietly, weaving into the atmosphere like shadows slipping just beyond the edge of your vision. One of the coolest things about the effects here is how seamlessly they blend with the practical effects. The monkey itself feels tactile and real, like it's something you could reach out and touch, or maybe something that might reach back. There's a mix of practical puppetry and subtle digital enhancements that give the toy an unnerving presence. The way its cymbals clap, its eyes dart, or it shifts just slightly in the background feels organic. It's not a cartoonish or overly polished animation. It's the perfect balance of mechanical creepiness and lifelike movement. That tiny mix of real and digital tricks your brain into thinking, yes, that could be alive and watching. Beyond the monkey, the film uses visual effects in ways that aren't immediately obvious, but are deeply effective. For instance, there are moments when reality seems to warp just a bit. A shadow bends the wrong way, or a flicker of light catches on something unseen. These subtle touches aren't flashy CGI set pieces. They're almost subliminal suggestions that something isn't quite right. Because they're so low-key, you barely notice them consciously, but they add a layer of unease that sticks with you long after the scene ends. The use of lighting and shadows works hand in hand with the effects, creating an atmosphere where practical and digital blend so well that you can't quite tell where one ends and the other begins. This seamless fusion keeps the immersion intact, so you're not pulled out of the story by awkward CGI or overdone effects. Instead, you're drawn deeper in, squinting at the corners of the frame, wondering if the monkey just moved, or if it's all in your head. The film also wisely avoids the temptation to go overboard with gore or supernatural extravagance. Instead, the visual effects focus on enhancing mood and subtle scares. For example, a scene might feature a barely perceptible distortion in the background or an eerie glimmer that hints at the curse's presence without screaming for attention. These effects become almost like little puzzles for your brain to piece together, which adds to the film's slow-burning tension. And it's refreshing to see how the practical effects maintain a strong presence throughout the film. The monkey prop itself is crafted with such detail and care that it carries an almost uncanny life of its own. Close-ups of the toy reveal tiny imperfections and worn paint, making it feel like an artifact passed down through decades of family trauma. The filmmakers clearly understood that practical effects bring a tactile reality to horror that CGI alone can't replicate. The digital effects enhance, but don't replace, that real-world creepiness. So rather than dazzling you with a parade of digital effects, the monkey uses its visual magic like a whisper instead of a shout. It's about atmosphere, subtlety, and making you feel like the horror is lurking just out of sight, not broadcasting itself from a neon billboard. The visual effects work like a ghostly hand guiding your eyes to the shadows, nudging you to question what's real and what's a nightmare waiting to happen. Step into the world of the monkey, and you're instantly wrapped in a setting that feels like it's breathing with its own secrets. The set design and locations don't just serve as a backdrop. They become characters themselves, loaded with atmosphere and meaning that pull you deeper into the story's eerie grip. From the moment the film opens, every room, every piece of furniture, every faded wallpaper pattern seems carefully chosen to whisper stories of the past, lost memories, and lurking dread. The film mostly sticks to a handful of key locations, primarily the family home and the surrounding neighborhood, and it's amazing how much texture the production team squeezes out of these familiar spaces. The house itself is the perfect cage for the story's tension. It looks lived in but forgotten, like a place where time has slowed down or maybe stopped altogether. There's an uneasy mix of warmth and decay in the rooms. You see old photographs on the walls, worn-out furniture with sagging cushions, and little details like a dusty lamp or a cracked mirror that make it feel painfully real and oddly claustrophobic. It's the kind of place where you feel someone's watching you from behind the curtains, and you're probably right. Props in this film are not just random items. They carry emotional weight and tell silent stories. The cursed monkey toy itself is the most obvious example, but look closer and you'll notice other details. A broken clock frozen at a certain time, a child's abandoned drawing, a flickering television screen. Each one feels like a thread in the web of family history and personal trauma. The production design manages to turn everyday objects into subtle reminders of what's been lost or left unspoken. It's not flashy or showy, but deeply immersive. Outside the house, the neighborhood is just as thoughtfully crafted. It's not a generic suburban setting, but one that feels lived in and weathered by time. Cracked sidewalks, overgrown yards, and peeling paint on the fences create a slightly off-kilter feeling, like the world outside the house is slowly unraveling too. These locations aren't just pretty places for the camera. They reflect the characters' internal struggles. The ordinary looks ominous because the story is unfolding there, and you never know when the curse might leap out from the next shadowed alley or behind a rusted gate. One of the most impressive aspects of the set design is how it uses space to build tension. Narrow hallways that seem to close in, dimly lit staircases that stretch into darkness, and rooms cluttered just enough to feel claustrophobic without being overwhelming. The filmmakers clearly understand how the physical environment can shape our emotional response. You feel trapped, watching the characters navigate spaces that are both familiar and deeply unsettling. It's a masterclass in how production design can support a horror story without screaming for attention. And then there's the attention to detail in the little moments, like how light filters through the curtains, casting long shadows that dance eerily on the walls, or how certain corners of the house seem perpetually in twilight, never fully lit or dark. These choices add layers of mystery and keep you on edge. You start noticing these things subconsciously, which is exactly what great set design does. It builds atmosphere that seeps into your bones. In short, the settings and production design in The Monkey do more than just house the story. They deepen it. They make the world feel lived in and haunted, full of memories and silent screams. The film's locations and props become a silent language, telling you things about the characters and the curse without a single word. It's a richly textured environment that you don't just watch, you feel. The dialogue in The Monkey does something pretty impressive. It manages to feel both incredibly natural and quietly charged with emotion, which is no small feat in a horror film that juggles supernatural elements with deep family drama. You won't find characters dropping cliché one-liners or forced exposition just to explain the curse. Instead, the conversations flow like real people grappling with heavy memories, unspoken regrets, and the slow unraveling of trust. The script listens to how people actually speak, sometimes halting, sometimes clipped, sometimes stumbling over emotions they don't want to admit even to themselves. What really stands out is how the dialogue carries emotional weight without hitting you over the head. The characters don't need to say, "I'm scared," or "I'm angry" all the time. Their tone, pauses, and what they choose not to say speak volumes. There's a lot of subtlety in how the brothers interact. The script nails that complicated mix of resentment and longing that siblings often have, especially when there's a dark past between them. You get moments where they almost connect, but then the walls go back up. Those pauses, those unfinished sentences, feel so real that you find yourself leaning in, wanting to catch the words that almost slip out. The film also sprinkles in lines that stick with you long after you hear them. Not because they're loud or dramatic, but because they feel honest and true. One character might mutter something about the things we bury never stay buried, or mention how some memories don't fade, they just wait. These aren't flashy quotes designed for the poster. They're more like quiet confessions that feel like little keys unlocking the story's bigger themes. They add layers to the script, making you think about what the curse really means beyond the scares. There's also a clever balance between the emotional dialogue and moments that feel almost mundane, but become creepy in context. Characters talk about everyday things, family dinners, childhood memories, small grievances, and the script uses these normal conversations to build tension. Because when the normal feels fragile and tense, you're waiting for the next cymbal crash or the next eerie sign. It's a smart way to make the horror feel grounded and relatable. Sharp wit isn't the focus here, but when the script does inject a little dark humor or irony, it lands perfectly. It's the kind of humor that feels like a nervous defense mechanism or a fleeting way to cut through the heaviness for a moment. That makes the scares hit even harder because you're emotionally invested. The dialogue doesn't just tell you the story. It pulls you inside the characters' minds and hearts, making their fears and pain feel palpable. Overall, the script feels like a quiet storm, understated but powerful. It doesn't rely on loud scares or over-explaining. Instead, it trusts the audience to pick up on the weight behind every word, every silence, and every carefully chosen phrase. It's a great example of how good writing can deepen a horror film, making it about more than just what jumps out at you, but what stays with you long after the screen goes dark. The Monkey walks a fascinating tightrope between embracing classic horror elements and flipping them on their head in ways that keep you guessing. It's not a movie that just recycles the usual haunted toy trope and calls it a day, no. It takes those familiar beats and spins them into something more emotionally complex and thematically rich. You get the chills and the creepy atmosphere, sure, but there's also a real focus on family dynamics and psychological tension that makes it stand out from the pack. At first glance, the film checks off some of the genre boxes you'd expect. An eerie, cursed object, mysterious deaths, creepy atmospherics, and the slow unraveling of a dark secret. But instead of leaning into jump scares or gore as its main tools, the Monkey prefers to build a simmering dread that creeps in through the characters' fears and fractured relationships. This approach feels fresh because it respects the audience's intelligence, letting the horror grow organically from the story instead of relying on tired scare tactics. What's particularly interesting is how the film balances its horror with a heavy dose of drama. The tension isn't just about what's going to jump out next, but also about the emotional baggage the characters carry and how their past mistakes haunt them as much as the cursed toy does. This layering adds depth and makes the suspense feel earned rather than manufactured. It's a slower burn, but a satisfying one that keeps you emotionally hooked. You'll find moments where the movie plays with suspense in clever ways, twisting your expectations. Just when you think you know where the story is headed, it veers off in a direction that's more about psychological torment than supernatural shock. It's like the film is whispering in your ear. The real horror isn't the toy. It's what it brings up inside you. That kind of subversion is refreshing, especially in a genre that sometimes feels overcrowded with jump scares and predictable plots. Humor is barely sprinkled in, mostly in the form of dry, almost uncomfortable exchanges between characters who are clearly trying to mask their fear or tension. These moments don't break the mood. They add texture, showing how people cope with dread in very human ways. It's not a horror comedy, but these subtle touches of wit make the characters feel more real and relatable. Action sequences aren't the centerpiece here either. Instead, the film leans heavily into suspense and atmosphere, trusting that the slow unraveling of mystery and the building emotional stakes will keep you hooked. This choice might surprise viewers expecting nonstop thrills, but it's exactly what helps the Monkey carve out its own space within the genre. So, while the Monkey nods to classic horror conventions, it's the way it blends them with emotional drama, psychological nuance, and a restrained style of storytelling that gives it a fresh voice. It's like an old horror story told in a new language, familiar enough to feel comfortable, but different enough to keep you on the edge of your seat. The Monkey isn't just about scares and supernatural chills. It quietly slips in some pretty thoughtful social and cultural commentary that adds surprising layers beneath the surface. What's fascinating is how these themes weave through the story naturally. Almost like the curse itself is a metaphor for deeper issues the characters are wrestling with, rather than feeling like the filmmakers are trying to hit you over the head with a message. This subtlety keeps the film grounded, making its commentary all the more effective. One of the biggest threads running through the movie is the idea of family trauma and how pain passes down through generations. The cursed monkey isn't just a creepy toy. It's almost like a physical embodiment of buried secrets, unresolved guilt, and the silent wounds that families carry but rarely talk about. The way the characters interact shows how these unspoken histories shape their identities, decisions, and even their fears. It's a reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't ghosts or demons, but the emotional baggage we inherit and try to ignore. There's also a commentary on how people deal with grief and loss, especially in cultures or communities where emotional expression might be restricted or stigmatized. The film captures that tension beautifully, the frustration of wanting to confront painful truths, but being stuck in patterns of denial or avoidance. You see characters struggling to break free from these cycles, and the cursed monkey becomes a symbol of the inescapable past catching up with them. It feels very human and real, grounding the supernatural horror in something emotionally relatable. In terms of broader social commentary, the movie hints at the idea of modern disconnection and how technology or busy lives can isolate family members from each other. The quiet, almost claustrophobic setting contrasts with how we often think of families today: busy, distracted, and spread thin. Here, the slow unraveling of relationships and the focus on physical spaces like the home amplify that sense of isolation and missed connection. It's a subtle nod to how important it is to face what's real and present rather than hide behind screens or distractions. What's impressive is how the film handles these topics without feeling preachy or forced. The commentary feels baked into the characters' struggles and the story's atmosphere, not tacked on as an afterthought. It invites you to think about these issues while still keeping you hooked on the suspense and mystery. The supernatural elements serve as a clever way to explore real human fears: fear of loss, fear of confronting the past, fear of being alone with painful truths. Overall, the social and cultural themes in The Monkey add a quiet richness that makes the film linger in your mind. They give the horror a purpose beyond just scaring you, making it a story about the ghosts we carry inside, not just the ones we see. It's that blend of eerie and emotional that gives the film its unique voice and keeps you thinking long after the credits roll. The Monkey is one of those films that sneaks under your skin and sticks with you long after you've watched it. It knows how to pull on your emotions in ways that are subtle but powerful, and it creates moments that hit you unexpectedly hard. Whether it's a sudden chill down your spine, a pang of sadness, or a flicker of uneasy laughter. This movie isn't about constant shocks or loud scares. It's more about building an emotional connection that makes every scene feel important and every silence loaded with meaning. From the very beginning, the film invites you into a world that feels familiar yet unsettling, and it quickly sets up relationships that you care about. The family dynamics, the regrets, the tensions, they all feel real enough to make you lean in and want to understand what's going on beneath the surface. When the supernatural elements kick in, they aren't just scary for the sake of scares. They become extensions of the characters' inner fears and conflicts, which makes the tension feel personal and immediate. You're not just watching a haunted toy story. You're watching people wrestle with their past and each other, and that emotional layer adds a richness that keeps you hooked. There are moments in the film that really shake you emotionally. You might find yourself holding your breath during a tense scene, feeling your heart race as the mystery deepens, or unexpectedly tearing up when the characters confront painful truths or show moments of vulnerability. The film balances these emotional beats with subtle humor, dry, sometimes awkward exchanges that feel like real people trying to cope with fear and uncertainty. These bits of levity don't break the mood. Instead, they make the characters more relatable and the overall experience more human. The Monkey also excels at creating scenes that spark conversation. After watching, you're likely to find yourself thinking about what the curse really means, or how family secrets can haunt us in real life. It invites you to reflect on how people handle grief, guilt, and the things left unsaid. And because the story unfolds with layers of mystery and symbolism, it's a film that rewards repeat viewings. You might catch small details or understand character motivations better the second or third time around. In terms of excitement, this isn't a roller coaster of nonstop thrills, but the pacing and storytelling are tight enough to keep you engaged without feeling rushed. The suspense builds gradually, pulling you deeper into the story and making every reveal count. When the climax arrives, it delivers a satisfying punch that feels earned and emotionally resonant rather than just a loud finale. Overall, the film creates an emotional experience that is immersive and lasting. It knows how to balance suspense with heart, scares with sadness, and darkness with a glimmer of hope. It's the kind of movie that makes you want to talk about it afterward, not just because of the creepy moments, but because of the emotional journey it takes you on. That blend of eerie atmosphere and genuine feeling is what makes The Monkey so engaging and memorable. The Monkey is packed with symbolism and metaphors that give it a richness beyond the surface story of a haunted toy. The cursed monkey isn't just a scary object. It's a powerful symbol that keeps popping up in different ways throughout the film, representing much more than a supernatural threat. It acts like a mirror reflecting the family's hidden pain, unresolved guilt, and the toxic patterns they can't seem to escape. Every time the monkey appears on screen, it's a reminder of the emotional baggage lurking beneath the surface, making it feel like the real monster isn't the toy itself, but what it represents. One of the most striking motifs is the monkey's expression and movement. It's unsettling, almost eerily human in its subtle gestures. This blurring of lines between object and living thing taps into the fear of the familiar turning hostile, the way something innocent can become corrupted by trauma and secrets. It's like the monkey is a physical manifestation of the family's inner demons, always watching, always waiting for a moment to remind them of their darkest fears. The film also uses recurring visual cues to deepen the storytelling. Shadows, mirrors, and reflections appear repeatedly, symbolizing the duality of the characters, their outward appearances versus their hidden struggles. Scenes where characters catch glimpses of themselves, or the monkey in a reflection, often coincide with moments of self-realization or confrontation with painful truths. It's as if the movie is saying that to escape the curse, you first have to face what's inside, not just what's outside. Color palettes throughout the film shift subtly to support the mood and themes. Warm tones are often used in flashbacks or family moments, evoking nostalgia but tinged with sadness, while colder, harsher lighting dominates scenes of confrontation and fear, emphasizing isolation and emotional chill. This contrast visually reinforces the tension between past warmth and present trauma, showing how memories can both comfort and haunt. Another interesting metaphor is the idea of silence and sound, or the lack thereof. The monkey's silence is as loud as any scream, symbolizing the unspoken pain and secrets that weigh heavily on the family. When silence is broken, whether by a sudden noise or a character finally speaking their truth, it marks a turning point. The film cleverly uses sound design to make these moments resonate deeply, turning what might be a simple scene into an emotional punch. Even the house itself can be seen as a metaphor, representing the mind of the family unit. The creaky floors, locked rooms, and hidden corners mirror the mental and emotional barriers the characters have built to protect themselves, but that also trap them in cycles of fear and denial. Moving through the house is like navigating their memories and emotions, with the cursed monkey lurking in the shadows as a constant reminder of what they're trying to avoid. All these layers of symbolism and metaphor work together to create a story that's as much about the human psyche as it is about supernatural horror. They invite you to look deeper, to think about what the real curses in our lives might be, and how the things we carry silently can be just as terrifying as any ghost or demon. It's these hidden depths that make The Monkey a film you can revisit and discover new meanings in each time, turning a simple horror story into a rich, emotional experience. The Monkey steps into an interesting space when you consider it in the context of its franchise and the broader horror landscape it connects to. While it might seem like just another cursed object story at first glance, it actually adds a unique chapter to the lineage of haunted toy films, giving the trope a fresh emotional spin and deeper psychological layers. It's not just a standalone scare fest. It taps into a tradition of horror films that explore how the supernatural can intertwine with family drama and personal trauma. If you think about franchises like Annabelle or even the Child's Play series, they focus heavily on the mythos of the cursed or possessed toy itself, its origins, its malevolent intentions, and its growing power. The Monkey flips this a bit by focusing more on how the curse affects the people around it, turning the narrative inward. Instead of expanding a larger universe filled with monsters, it narrows down to intimate character studies, making it feel less like an action-packed franchise installment and more like a standalone story that could influence or inspire similar future films in the genre. For fans familiar with the franchise background or similar horror traditions, The Monkey feels like a thoughtful evolution. It respects the familiar beats, the ominous toy, the escalating tension, the supernatural occurrences, but it also questions what these horrors really mean. It's as if the film asks, what if the scariest part isn't the demon or curse, but what it reveals about us? This subtle shift in focus adds a new dimension to the franchise's typical narrative and gives it a fresh voice. On the historical or cultural side, the film doesn't dive into a specific historical era or event, but it does immerse you in a very particular emotional history that feels timeless. The way it portrays family secrets, grief, and trauma feels universally relatable across generations. It taps into a collective understanding of how past wounds linger and shape the present, something that resonates deeply regardless of the time period. Production design and setting add to this immersive experience by creating a world that feels lived in and authentic rather than glossy or overly stylized. The environments don't scream period piece, but they have a grounded quality that makes the story's emotional beats hit harder. It's like stepping into a family's private world, filled with both warmth and shadows, rather than a sanitized horror playground. In a way, The Monkey acts as a bridge between classic haunted object stories and the newer wave of psychological horror that leans into emotional complexity. Whether it's part of a wider franchise or viewed on its own, it manages to hold onto the core appeal of haunted toy tales while pushing the narrative toward more personal and nuanced territory. It's a film that acknowledges its roots, but isn't afraid to grow beyond them, inviting both longtime genre fans and newcomers to experience something familiar yet refreshingly different. When it comes to The Monkey, one of the first things that jumps out is how impressively it uses its budget. While it might not be a blockbuster with a massive financial backing, the production quality punches well above its weight. The filmmakers clearly prioritize smart spending, opting for atmospheric set design, practical effects, and tight cinematography rather than blowing cash on flashy CGI or over-the-top action sequences. This careful allocation of resources means the film feels polished and immersive without ever seeming cheap or rushed, which is a tricky balance to strike on a modest budget. The visual and sound departments really shine, proving that a horror film doesn't need millions of dollars to create genuine scares and a gripping mood. The lighting, camera work, and editing all contribute to a sense of dread and suspense that keeps you glued to the screen, making every dollar spent feel like it was invested in the right places. Even the cast performances benefit from this approach, as the intimate setting encourages nuanced acting rather than relying on spectacle. Box office-wise, The Monkey had a bit of an uphill battle. It wasn't launched with the fanfare of a major studio tentpole, so it relied heavily on word of mouth and critical buzz to attract viewers. Its financial performance reflected this. It didn't break records or dominate the charts, but it performed steadily enough to prove there's an appetite for horror films that focus on psychological tension and emotional storytelling. Streaming and on-demand platforms gave it a second life, helping it reach a wider audience beyond the theatrical release. Marketing played a key role here. It wasn't flashy or bombastic, but rather targeted horror fans and audiences who appreciate smart, character-driven stories. Trailers and promotional materials leaned into the eerie atmosphere and the mysterious curse rather than showing off the scariest scenes, which helped build curiosity without spoiling the experience. This subtle marketing approach seemed to resonate with a niche audience who enjoys slow-burn horror, though it might have limited the film's appeal to more mainstream crowds looking for high-energy thrills. Audience reception was generally positive, with viewers praising how the film managed to create suspense and emotional depth despite its smaller scale. This positive buzz helped sustain interest, encouraging more people to check it out via digital platforms, which ultimately boosted its overall earnings. The steady, word-of-mouth growth rather than a massive opening weekend made The Monkey feel like a slow-burning success rather than a flash in the pan. So, when you look at the budget versus box office and overall reception, The Monkey is a great example of a film that made smart choices to maximize its resources, found its audience without overwhelming marketing, and carved out a respectable place for itself in the horror world. It's proof that with the right creative vision and careful planning, you don't need a Hollywood-sized budget to make an impact. If you're ready to dive into the eerie world of The Monkey, you might be wondering exactly where you can catch this chilling tale. Well, depending on when you're watching, the options might vary a bit, but there are definitely some solid ways to experience the film that will get you right into the spooky vibe it delivers. First off, if the movie is still in theaters, seeing it on the big screen is a fantastic way to soak in every shadowy detail, every unsettling sound, and those moments that make your heart jump. The theatrical experience naturally amplifies the atmosphere with immersive sound and a dark, focused environment where every creak and whisper feels much more intense. Once the theatrical run wraps up, The Monkey usually finds its way to streaming platforms, which is perfect if you want to revisit it or watch it from the comfort of your own home. It often lands on popular services that specialize in horror and thriller genres, or those with a broad film library. Streaming gives you the flexibility to watch it anytime, but for the fullest impact, consider watching it in a dimly lit room with good headphones or a quality sound system. That way, you catch every eerie note in the soundtrack and the subtle background noises that build tension throughout the film. Digital rental or purchase is another great option if you want to own a copy or watch it offline. Platforms like Amazon Prime Video, iTunes, or Google Play typically offer the monkey for rent or purchase shortly after the theatrical and initial streaming windows. Renting it is a budget-friendly way to see the movie at your convenience, while buying it means you can revisit the haunting story anytime without worrying about availability. Just like with streaming, the home viewing experience can be enhanced by setting the scene. Turn off the lights, minimize distractions, and maybe even gather a small group of friends who love horror to share in the chills and thrills. For those who enjoy physical media, keep an eye out for DVD or Blu-ray releases. These often come with extras like behind-the-scenes footage, interviews, and director commentary, which add a fun layer of insight into the making of the film and its deeper meanings. Plus, nothing beats the tactile experience of popping in a disc and having a dedicated horror movie night. In a nutshell, while the theatrical experience might give you the most intense scare factor, streaming and digital platforms offer great convenience and accessibility. The best way to watch depends on your mood. Whether you want the communal thrill of a dark theater or the cozy, controlled environment of your own living room. Either way, the monkey delivers enough suspense and atmosphere to make the experience memorable no matter where you press play.